episode of the Strixhaven season of the Chronicles. I'm Alex, as always, joined by Nathan. Nathan, how's it going this week?
It's been a great week from a drafting perspective, but it's still struggling.
Nice, yeah. So let's just take a look at, as we like to do, let's take a look at how your week went this week. What have you been drafting, and what were your results?
So just to recap from last time, I don't think we threw this number up there, so I just wanted to share it. I know we scored one draft, and I did a miserable percentage of rejects and not, disagrees. The first episode I went 9-12 for a 43% win percentage. Mm-hmm. Since we revamped the lesson learned and focused on that, episode 2 I went 16-10 for a 62% win percentage, which brings me to an overall of 53%. What have I been drafting? I actually had one trophy with Silver Quill.
Nice.
And somehow I keep finding myself in the Silver Quill lane. I don't know if I'm forcing it or it's actually open or I'm just drawn to the beautiful black-white colors together.
Well, it's a good place to be, let me tell you that.
Oh, okay. So that's where I'm landing a lot. Just to air the dirty laundry, as we were talking about before the air, I think in a traditional set with 10 color pairs, mm-hmm. seeing a gold card or a certain color pair later in the draft is to me like, oh, that lane is open.
Yeah.
But with only 5 guilds or colleges,
Nathan, colleges.
With only 5 colleges, you see gold cards later in the draft, and I think I'm getting the false sensation that something's open. And right. So I don't know if my drafting is airing or not, but I'd love to work through that today.
Great. Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. Just a small point on that. Before we get into the draft, I think that's a pretty common experience. And my advice has been draft your lane until you can't, basically. Right? So, if you've got a good black-white start and you see some, blue-green cards, 7th pick, well, you should pivot if you can't take reasonable black or white cards. If you're just I should probably start taking blue and green cards, right? But if you can still take, functional and reasonable black-white cards, just keep drafting your lane because you've been passing those blue-green cards anyways. Your pack 2 is going to be pretty good. I think you end up in more train wrecks than not when you go, okay, I'm on this path. Here's a few cards that are pretty good that don't belong to my color pair, right? I think that train wrecks you a lot of the time. So that would be my big picture advice. Keep in your lane until you can't, basically, and hedge at those points when you realize, I can't take anything good here.
Well, yeah, I think queued up today we have a draft that I don't know if I should have ended up black-green or black-white, so that's good to go through. And the other thing that I'm still struggling with is sequencing my learn and lesson cards. Yeah. And I think we have a gameplay from that queued up today. I literally saved the file and sent it to you, and I think I called it. I think I screwed up the sequencing or something like that. So.
Yeah, totally. And, so we'll look at your draft. We'll look at some gameplay. And I think we'll probably go a little bit faster through the draft because, there's not as much. We're 3 weeks in. I think, you've done a pretty good job of aligning, calibrating to the format. And I think so have a lot of people. One of the great things you're talking about getting up to date with Lesson Learn. There were so many picks when I was watching your drafts this week that I was like, yes, Nathan, you took the Lesson Learn card even when it was a close pick. So yeah, we don't have too much to go over there, basically. We don't have to tread over too much old ground. So that's nice.
I do think I passed in environmental sciences in this draft, though.
Jeez.
So we'll have to talk about that.
All right, well, let's just jump in then. All right, Nathan, here we are in the draft. And just tell me what your thoughts are on this pick on pack 1.
So for me, it was Inkling Summoning, Closing Statement, or Gnarled Professor. Mm-hmm. I actually don't have a lot of experience with Gnarled Professor, but a 4-mana 5/4 trample that draws a card seems pretty good.
Yep.
So I landed there.
Just a great rate, right? So just, a little insight into my own drafting. I'm sure, frequenters of my stream or people who have read my content, listened to my content know this, but I have a huge Silver Quill bias, right? Where it's just if I can draft Silver Quill or white in general, I'm going to, because it's open fairly often. And I think it is the best deck when it comes together, and it comes together fairly often. That being said, Gnarled Professor is certainly one of the cards that would make me go, okay, I'll take a non-Silver Quill card out of these early packs. It's just such a great rate. Just to give, this pack a little bit of context, if you weren't to take the Gnarled Professor, if this wasn't here, my order would probably be Closing Statement, Inkling Summoning, Silver Quill Apprentice, and then Silver Quill Pledge Mage. Those are the other good cards in this pack, basically. And a little bit on the summoning here, having the first Inkling summoning is pretty much as important. It's less important, but close to as important as the first Environmental Sciences when you're in a deck that can cast summoning. So, that's just some thoughts on this pack. But yeah, totally agree with your Gnarled Professor pick. That card's great.
Where does Witherbloom Pledge Mage land for you?
Yeah, interesting. So, not really up there. It's an okay card. I actually think it's pretty good. All the Pledge Mages are pretty decent, but I'm never actively looking for it, basically, right? Witherbloom in general is one of the weaker colleges, potentially the weakest, depending on who you ask. And so it's like, if I'm to draft Witherbloom, I have to be shown that the green and black cards are coming to me, and then I will pick up a Witherbloom Pledge Mage in a late pack, but I'm never prioritizing it. It's a good stabilizing play, but kind of its supporting cast aren't that great in general. So,
Okay.
And as an extension of that, by you taking Gnarled Professor, that points me a lot more towards blue-green rather than blue-black. Or sorry, green-black. All right, so let's move on from there. So you start with Gnarled Professor and you get to this pack. Thoughts?
For me, I was choosing between Baleful Mastery and Regrowth.
Mm-hmm.
I know Rise of Extus has been really good in terms of sealed, because I did one sealed. And watched other people jam it, but I wasn't really sure where it sat with in draft. Cram Session, obviously another learn card that's good there. You have the Pest Summoning Lesson. It just seemed like there's a lot of good choices here. If I wanted to stay on color, I would have probably taken the Regrowth, because 2 mana to get back any card in your graveyard seems great, but I landed on the Baleful Mastery.
Yeah, so I think this is a disagree for me. I would probably take the Rise of Extus here, for a few reasons. So, number one, I think these cards are comparable. With this, obviously, this is instant and 4 mana as opposed to 6 mana in sorcery. But the cost on this on Rise of Extus hasn't felt prohibitive, and learning is just huge. I know we had a whole episode about this, but that just goes to show how much I really do care about learn and prioritize that. Right, Mastery is great. But I would just err towards the learn card. And I don't think this is wrong, really. I think this might just be a slight preference thing. So I disagree on this, but I would take the Rise here. And then Regrowth is interesting, too, because it sticks with your Gnarled Professor there. And the relationship between how much I want to play Regrowth is highly correlated to how many good cards I have, right? You don't really want to play Regrowth if you don't have a lot of great cards to get back, and you already have a Gnarled Professor, which is a pretty good card, right? So that's kind of interesting. But I think the flexibility of Rise of Extus being hybrid as well plays into that a little bit too. So I would probably take the Rise here.
If Rise wasn't here, what would you take?
Good question. Probably the Mastery. I think Regrowth is good, but an efficient removal spell would probably edge it out for me there, even though Regrowth is also the same color.
Got it.
All right, let's move on. So, what do you think about this pack?
So I run the Maelstrom Muse once. I really wasn't a huge fan of it. It doesn't go with my current colors. Like you said at the intro, try to stay on your colors as long as possible, even though this draft happened before that. So I was choosing between the Mage Hunter's Onslaught and the Agonizing Remorse. I do like the Dust Speaker, but again, red-green and red-black aren't really a color pair in this format, so I really wasn't trying to go there. I just took a removal spell, basically a 4-mana removal spell. I took the Hand Disruption spell.
Yeah, I think I would... this is another disagree, I think. I don't think it's super wrong, because it's good logic to just say take a cheaper card here, especially if you've got, 2 4-mana cards already. But I do think that Mage Hunter's Onslaught is... It's enough better than Remorse that I would still take it early. So this means that you have to start prioritizing cheaper cards, right? It's never good to start a draft with 4-mana card, 5-mana card, 4-mana card, right? That's not where you want to be. But just the power level on Mage Hunter Onslaught. And it's kind of weird because I'm not somebody who likes to take 4-mana sorcery speed removal spells very highly. And I don't love Mage Hunter's Onslaught. It's a good card, not a great one. But I think it's enough better than Agonizing Remorse. There's Humiliate in this format, right? The white-black version of Agonizing Remorse. And I like that card quite a bit. I like Agonizing Remorse too, but not as much. Humiliate gets the nod because putting a counter on something is huge. Whereas, if you look at the numbers of this card, just on 17 lands, it's it's good, not great. Actually, it might not even be that good. It might be like a little bit below average, honestly. And where the numbers on this card are just a bit higher, basically. Not to use a purely these are the numbers argument for why I want this, but that's just, to back it up, basically. So yeah, I would give you a disagree on this.
I'm a big fan of the numbers. I have 17 lands open here. We can look it up.
Oh, sweet. Let's do that, yeah.
So looking this up, it looks like Mage Hunter's Onslaught's about 1 point something% higher than Agonizing Remorse in terms of win percentage.
Yeah, so it's not huge, but it's something, right? I don't want to put too much into that, but it is something. Anyways, and then the other card here, of course, so you were talking about is Maelstrom Muse, and I like Muse. I think that I've come down on this card in general. I've come down on Prismari in general. I think it's like a little bit worse than I thought it was at the beginning, and definitely not a card I would want to just like jump ship for after you've taken 2 good cards. So yeah, disagree, but again, close. All right, let's move on to this one. What do you think about this pack?
Well, it's funny you forecast Humiliate. So to me, this was a sign that Silverquill was open, I think, but I wasn't sure yet. And so rather than jumping right in and abandoning my gnarled Professor, I wanted to see what straight black or straight green cards there were. Mm-hmm. So I had narrowed it down to Spectre, Witherbloom, Pledge Mage, and Pest Summoning, and I landed on the Pledge Mage. So opening with a solid 5-drop here, 2, 4, 4, 5.
Right, yeah. So I would say this is more of a mistake because Humiliate is just such a premium card, I think. And if I can, kind of what I was saying, how I think Witherbloom's not that great and Silverquill is quite good. With your start of taking 2 black cards and a green card, even though Gnarled Professor definitely pushes me towards black-green a little bit, if I'm presented with the lane of I can take a black-white card, a good black-white card, I'll probably push in that direction a little bit, just because I do think Silverquill is enough better, and Humiliate is good enough of a card, basically. So I would take the Humiliate here. You already pointed out the reason why Witherbloom Pledge Mage isn't like fantastic, and you know what? I might even take Spectre of the Fens if you were just to take a black card or Pest Summoning, right? One of the things about Witherbloom is that it has this 3-drop problem where there aren't many good ones. So if you are going to go into Witherbloom, I would much rather prioritize a good 3-drop in Pest Summoning, as in you're prioritizing good 2-mana learn cards to go get this early, right? I would much rather prioritize this than prioritize a 5-drop. So, the combination of I think this is just a better card, and the fact that if you are going to take a card for Witherbloom, I think Pest Summoning is better. I think this is a mistake.
Got it. What do you think about the Inkcaster?
Medium to bad. Actually, I would say bad to medium. More bad than medium. It is reasonable when you have Blood Researcher, the black-green 2-mana, black-green 3-mana 2/2 that has menace and grows when you gain life, because if you have a counter on it, you attack, it gains a life, so it's a nice little combo there.
Oh, triggers, yeah.
But not a great card overall. It's just super, super clunky.
I saw somebody cast that into a strict proctor and couldn't pay the
not
the
a combo.
cost. So they was like, here's a nice 5-mana 2/2.
Yeah. All right, moving on here. What do you think about this pack?
All right, I'm gonna go with the signs, and I don't know. I know it's not the strongest black-white card, but 5th pick black-white Shadewing Laureate. I was trying to choose between that and the Infused with Vitality, which I've really enjoyed.
Yeah.
I liked. But I was like, we're seeing so many black and white cards. I'm going to try to hedge and shift here. So I landed on the Shadewing Laureate.
Agree. Yeah. Laureate, like you said, it's not a great black-white card, but it's a fine one. It is definitely the worst of the black-white, cards you will put in your deck, the gold cards, or the uncommon ones anyways, discounting stuff like Fracture, but worse than Humiliate, worse than Closing Statement, anything like that. But it's still a fine card and definitely a card I would take here. I actually agree quite a bit with you that Infused with Vitality has been an overperformer. In my sealed deck in the open yesterday, I ran 2 of them, and I was like, well, this is kind of my 22nd, 23rd card. They'll be fine, but not great. And they were actually huge overperformers. I actually think the card is a little bit underrated if you are drafting Witherbloom. That being said, if I can, I'll draft Silverquill over Witherbloom. So yeah, agree with the Shadewing.
Alex, how did the open go with the 2 Infused
You had to mention it. Well, we cashed it. It was pretty nice. We got all the way to 7 wins. Yeah, pretty happy about that. It was a tiring day, but overall fun and fruitful one.
Yeah, good on you.
Yeah, thanks, man. All right, let's move on. What do you think about this pick?
So speaking of infused vitality, there's no strong for me silver cool cards here.
Mm-hmm.
We're pretty much black-green at this point, so I landed on infuse. I wasn't really going to snag the snarl for splashing purposes, or if I actually end up black and white, I'm not too worried about the mana. So I went with infuse here.
So there's a few really interesting things about this pack. One, there's just a spirit summoning, and that can be a lesson for your black-white deck, right? So that already draws my eye. There's also Snakeskin Veil, which was a fine card in Kaldheim, but I think it's a lot better in this set. Just spell synergies. It just plays a lot better than it looks, I think. And you've already got like a Gnarled Professor, which that's something good to protect. Witherbloom Pledge Mage, it's not like a key threat or anything, but you'd like to keep your 5/5 around if they go to cast their 5 mana removal spell on it for 1 mana. And so if you're going to take a card for your black-green deck, I think I would take the Snakeskin Veil. Overall, if I were drafting this seat, you just like put me in with the cards you have here, I would probably take the Spirit Summoning as a learn card for your black-white deck. But if you're going to take a card for your black-green deck, I think it's Snakeskin Veil. So I think either way, that would be a mistake for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't had good experience with Snakeskin Veil in this format, but I mean, a very small sample size. I haven't been blown out with it, and I haven't, But again, you've also played hundreds of more games than I have, so I'll file that one away.
Has it been like stuck in your hand, or just like hasn't? I'm curious, like why? What are the negative experiences you've had?
I've only had 1 or 2 drafts with it, and it might save a creature once or twice, but I've never had really good creatures that I really cared about, and then I've not been blown out on the other side by a Snakeskin Veil. Gotcha. I've been blown out by the 1 white one that gives +2/+2, and I think indestructible.
Right, it's the hexproof, +1/+1, +2/+2 and hexproof. Yeah, beat me.
Yeah, that one's gotten me, but Snakeskin Veil hasn't. But I guess if the logic of the other one has gotten me, then this one should get me too.
Right, and this one's 1 mana instead of 2. Yeah. All right, let's move on to this next pick here. Thoughts about here?
I went with the white learn card.
Yeah,
that's basically it.
Yep, can't disagree with that one. Agree with that 100%. Guiding Voice is great. And I think even still, 3-4 weeks into the format, I honestly think a little bit underrated. Card is very good. So, yep, love it.
So at this point, I'm not really sure what I was going to be. Am I black? Am I white?
Yeah, you can't take a mono black card here, so it's not like you can like toe that line a little bit. So I just take the most powerful card. And the
Carrick hasn't been quite good for me, so
yeah, Carrick's okay. If you're going to take a green card, you take Scurried Colony because that card's quite good. But I think Guiding Voice is just better, basically. All right, let's move on to the next pick. You got a mythic. You got a channel.
Yeah. 8th pick channel.
Yeah.
3 cards I was looking at: Guiding Voice, Hunt for Specimen, Silver Quill Campus. At this point, I really wasn't 100% sure if I was going to be Silver Quill or not. So I went with I definitely, if I'm black-green, I'm going to play Hunt for Specimen, so I took that.
Yeah, totally. And if you're like, I think a lot of people might look at this card and be like, oh, it's not a Silver Quill card. Like, that's a 2-mana 1/1. Why do you want that? You'd like to play a 2-mana 2/2 on turn 2 in your Silver Quill decks, but playing this is not the worst when it lines you up to get your your Inkling Summoning, or lines you up to go get your Sciences, fix your mana, right? The fact that this card's so flexible makes up for the fact that you don't play a 2-powered creature on turn 2. So this is still very good in your Silver Quill deck. So yeah, I like that. Unlike the last pick where we were like, we can't just take a mono black card, toe that line a little bit longer. We can take a mono black card and toe the line between black green and black white. Leaves us really open. It's really flexible. So yeah, big agree on that. Love that. All right, and we move on. So
the Silver Quill card wheel, I think I don't have a lot of experience with this one. It seems strong. So I landed on that. I'm not really sure. Go Blank was also drawing my attention as well.
Yeah, I would definitely take Silver Quill up front. Like at this point, it's a little bit of a signal. I mean, quite a signal, I would say, if it's wheeling out of your first pack. And just to go back to your first pack, just to make a comparison quickly, our first pack didn't have, it had quite a few black-white cards. So it's not like a huge signal or anything because these are all still gone. But the fact that this is still here, it means something, right? If this was a pack without all these black-white cards and this wheels, that's awesome. You're just like, okay, I should be Silver Quill. But since there are 3 other black-white cards that didn't wheel, it means other people took them. It's not so much like 100% I should jump in. Gone too. Inquisition's even gone. Yeah. So that's kind of interesting. But you definitely just take that there. I totally agree. Sorry, I'll just go back to this pick quickly. Yeah, this card is probably a little bit better than it looks. Like, on initial read, it's like, oh, is that bonus that good? I mean, it's not amazing, but it helps your smaller creatures trade up. It helps your flyers get in for a bit of chip damage. Card's quite good. It's definitely a premium 2-drop. The other things to consider, I don't find Go Blank that appealing. I mean, it's fine, but I'm never prioritizing it. And Arrogant Poet's a good 2-drop, but Silver Quill Apprentice is better. All right, and we rounded this pack here. We'll just go through
went with the aggro 2-drop Arrogant Poet.
Yep, I think that's better than Cram Session here. Obviously, if you were in Witherbloom or pointed towards Witherbloom a bit more at this point, you'd probably like the Cram Session. I think this card's a lot better in Witherbloom than Arrogant Poet is, but I think you're pointing towards Black-White now, so I like Witherbloom. I like the Arrogant Poet. Move to here. Nothing too relevant. Take a star pupil.
I took the star pupil. Would you have taken that or make your mark?
Yeah, I would take this because there's some like really low to the ground versions of Silver Quill. Like I don't tend to draft Silver Quill like this, where I'm like really low to the ground. I tend to be a bit more like, you play your cheap creatures, but then your 4 and 5 mana flyers. And star pupil is not generally good in my Silver Quill decks. But it's nothing. You're not taking anything over it basically. So sure. Yeah, you just take it here. Move on. Your first year. Yep, I like that over.
Would you have taken that over the Campus?
Yeah, I would take that here. This is a good 2-drop. This is a really good 2-drop. A deceptively good one, actually. Right? Like, the times you go Guiding Voice on this thing to attack for 4 on turn 3 and then play another 2-drop, that's pretty darn good. So, yeah, I agree with that. This pick here, you got, you picked that.
I think it's irrelevant. I took the Spirit.
Yeah, I mean, it's not totally irrelevant because I think there are considerations for these cards too. Biblioplex Assistant, especially if you have a bunch of like removal spells to buy back, is actually a playable card. But I would take the 2-drop here, especially when you have a Guiding Voice to maybe buff it up. Then we get to Reconstruct History, which I actually like this card as a splash in my slower Black-White decks, but I will agree with that over the 1-4 basically. And
we'll give those irrelevant.
Sure. Last week we get a Cogwork Archivist. Okay, so basically at the end of pack 1 here, what are your thoughts?
I think I'm a mediocre Black-White deck.
Yeah, I would say a little bit better than mediocre, just because you've locked in all your 2s and you have some good learn cards, right? Like that already points me to be like, okay, like I've got some of the important parts of this deck. If I were, the next 2 packs after you kind of found your lane, settled in a little bit more, are kind of you're filling out your deck packs, right? If in your view of drafting Silver Quill right now, what do you think are the important things to pick up that you don't have?
Wow, that's a really good question. Let's see here. I have removal. Mm-hmm. I have hand disruption. Did I take a hand disruption?
Yeah, you got the agonizing remorse.
I took one. I think I need more evasion. Mm-hmm. I think I need. Achillean would be great.
Yeah, obviously.
Some sort of flying to go with my Shadewing Laureate. Maybe a few more combat trips to pump and keep my stuff alive.
Yeah, so basically I would be prioritizing, like you said, the evasion for sure, your Spectre Defense, your Combat Professors, your Owlin Shield Mages, right? Those are all great. Like, you've already locked in the first half of this deck, which are the 2-drops, and that's important. The second half is, after the early creatures have gotten in, the evasion to finish them off, basically. And those 3 that I mentioned, the Spectre Defense, the Combat Prof, and the Shield Mage are like my 3 big ones. Those I'm really looking to pick up. And then, of course, the other part that you're looking for is some lesson cards, right? You've got, you've got a few learn cards in there, but definitely want to pick up that first Inkling. Definitely want to pick up that Environmental Sciences, and then other good ones you could pick up. So yeah, that's what I'd be looking to pick up going into this pack, just to kind of contextualize things.
How about an Expanded Anatomy?
Expanded Anatomy is a good one. So
that's what I took out of this pack.
Yeah. So this is a really interesting pack, because if Free Flame Painter is actually like a pretty busted card, and if I have a Sciences in my pile already, I actually think I take it here. But without the guarantee of a Sciences at some point, I wouldn't take it here. I would just take the Expanded Anatomy, both because you definitely want this card, and there's no guarantee that I can reasonably play this card. Right? It's so great when you lock in that Sciences early and you're like, yeah, I've got 4 learn cards, 5 learn cards. This is a pretty free splash, right? But I can't do that here, unfortunately. And Expanded Anatomy is just one of the best cards for the Silver Quill decks, too. So, yeah, totally love this pick. 100% agree with you just taking Expanded Anatomy here.
Yeah, I've gotten beaten down by Expanded Anatomy on that 1-2 flyer.
On the Stone Rise
Stone
Spirit?
Rise Spirit, yeah.
I mean, put it on anything. Put it on a Silver Quill Pledge Mage, right? Give it lifelink flying. Like, that's a huge swing, right? The card is so great. You know, one of the things about this card that's so great is not only is just like a good play to be like, all right, learn, you know, guiding voice my flyer, expand anatomy my flyer, attack you, put you under pressure. A lot of the times, you know, you think of this card as something that's not good when you're behind. Sometimes these auras where you're like, well, you know, they're beating me down and I'm probably going to lose this game. And what, like, I want to draw a removal spell or I want to draw a big creature or something. But a lot of times what I've done in situations when I'm behind, I go, all right, well, I have a 3-power flyer. I'm just going to stick this expanded anatomy on it and you're dead in 2 turns. So I'm pretty behind in this game, but if you can't answer this, you're actually dead. So, you know, it gets a little bit of value in those situations too. So yeah,
the vigilance is nice too.
Yes, the vigilance is huge because sometimes they just can't attack you back that one turn. So yeah. All right, so move on and thoughts on this pack.
So I've had really good experiences with Umbral Juke.
Love it, yeah.
Instant speed 2/1 flyer or making him sack, you know, something is great. So I was looking at that, Environmental Sciences or Rise of Exodus, and I actually chucked the Juke over the Sciences.
Right. I would say that's a mistake. I love Juke myself too. It's a great card, right? Like, you know, 2/1 flash flyer for 3 is just a decent rate. Not a great rate, but a decent rate. And then adding them sacrificing a creature onto it, some percentage of the time, having the choice to do that is great. This card is very, very good. I would even take it over Rise of Exodus, even though it's a great card. But it's so important to have that first Environmental Sciences, right? Unless there was like a bomb or a Killian would definitely classify as, yeah, I'll take that over Sciences. But there's not too many cards I would want to take over Sciences in this spot when you don't have the first one over already. So I would say it's a mistake. At the same time, I do love me a Juke.
Got it. Yeah, I think that's the only Sciences I see in this draft, is a FYI. So, right. I mean, definitely punished for not taking it. Took the Inkling Summoning.
Yep.
It's my first lesson like that. It's strong.
Big agree. You got to lock that Inkling Summoning in. Next pack here. I don't think
there's really many other considerations in that pack.
No, there wasn't too much there. How about this one?
I wasn't sure on this. I wasn't sure between the Lorehold Pledge Mage, because you know that's basically in this deck a 2/2 first striker, which is awesome. Introduction to Annihilation, just to get that removal spell. And I have 0 experience with Dueling Coach, but I was like, I already have Star Pupil. I just took Expanded Anatomy. I have some place to put +1/+1 counters, so I took the Dueling Coach, and not really sure about this one at all.
Right, so I think this is also probably, I would classify as a mistake, because Dueling Coach is you know, Dueling Coach and Tenured Incaster, they kind of go hand in hand of like clunky cards that look like they belong in a Silver Quill deck, but just don't do enough. Basically, it's just like a 4-mana 3/3. 4 mana for 3/3 with the stats is not great. The ability is 5 mana. It just takes so much to get going. And I like both those other options you mentioned, Pledge Mage and Intro to Annihilation. I think that I would take the Intro to Annihilation. One, like we said, we really want to pick up some more lessons. We just got 1 or 2, so that's not too bad. But the other thing that makes me want to take this card, and I do definitely want the first copy of this card, is that I don't love Lorehold Pledge Mage in these black-white decks, just because it's fine. You know, it's a good card if I can cast it, but the white is a little bit tricky on turn 3. That's all. Like, you know, you do want to be curving out. You want to be playing your 2-on-2 or 3-on-3, and when I can't play my 3-on-3, it's a bit punishing sometimes. So that leads me to just want to take the Intro to Annihilation here.
Got it. Mistake.
All right, our next pick here. Thoughts on this pick?
Picking up that flying evasion that I wanted to grab the shield mate.
Yep, blocking in that key part of this deck fills that role we need to fill. You know, there's a rare. The rare's okay, but, you know, wouldn't splash it or anything.
Is that one good? I have, again, no experience with that one either.
Yeah, it's the Warsinger. So, you know, it's a good card. I will first pick this card out of, like, kind of weak packs. Not over Environmental Sciences, not over, like, you know, the premium uncommons or anything. But it's just a good threat, right? Like, 3 mana, 3/3, Vigilance Trample. That makes them play a little bit strangely, basically, is the way that you want to look at it. This thing's almost never bringing something back, because they're going to block it in a way where, you know, right. It won't bring something back. But it plays well with tricks, right? Like with Enthusiastic Study, and making them play in this really awkward fashion is worth something. So yeah, I like the card quite a bit. All right, moving on. We pick up another Shield Mage. Yep, agree with that. Yep. Great. Let's move on. Now we're at the latter half of the draft. We can kind of breeze through things.
All right.
I'll just
This one I was actually curious about.
Yeah.
I have two questions, and so you can help me. One is, I was trying to choose between Reflective Golem and Pilgrim of the Ages. I landed on Reflective Golem.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a question. That's like choice one. And then my second question is, how does Reflective Golem work with the study break? Can you copy it?
That's a great question, because it looks like you can't, because it's like target your golem, target your opponent's thing was what the intuitive thing to do is, where you're
the golem says only targets your golem.
Right. So what you can do, and this is something that people don't do often, target your golem with the study break, just the golem, and then you copy it, and the net result of that is you get 2 copies of study break. You only get to tap 2 of their things, but you get to learn an additional time. That's the benefit of it, right? So you're going to want to copy it, pay the 2, you learn. The other copy of study break goes in the stack, and you can just tap their 2 things, learn again. So it does work favorably with that. Yeah. You just have to be, know how to use it, basically. As for this pick, this is very close. So you took the Reflective Golem, right?
I did, yeah. But I, as you can tell, I clicked on the Pilgrim because I've liked that card too.
Yeah, Pilgrim's
and
really
I almost dragged it over there.
yeah. Pilgrim's really good just to bridge that gap. This is very close for me. I would tank on this pick for a while too. So the things that make me want Reflective Golem are specifically Guiding Voice and Expanded Anatomy. Those are the 2 cards, right? Because Guiding Voice on this thing is just nuts. Being able to learn twice for 3 mana and put 2 counters, that's just such an insane burst of value, really, and onboard presence too. And then Expanded Anatomy, going like Anatomy this, Anatomy something else for 5 mana is also great. And obviously you can go get your Anatomy with your Guiding Voice. You have both of those cards, so I think I would take it here over the Pilgrim, even though it's a card I really, really like. And Pilgrim's actually kind of similar to Hunt for Specimens, where you'd go like, do you really want a 3 mana 2/1 in your aggressive deck? Where it's like, it's twofold, right? Where I don't actually think Silverquill is like, has to be built as like this super aggressive deck that needs to curve out or it can't win, right? It has those flyers, it can play a little bit of a longer game. And plus there's something to be said for a reasonable body, which 2/1 isn't like the best thing, but it's pretty, you can attack with impunity, block with impunity. But there's something to be said for just increasing consistency in any deck. And this being able to get a land is just so great. And it also just randomly like grinds out the late game for you, right? So I like Pilgrim a lot, but with the voice and the Expanded Anatomy, I agree with taking Golem. So yeah. All right, and this next pick here? Take a...
I went with the Pledge Mage.
Oh,
over the Onslaught. I know. I guess that.
Yeah,
and you can see I dragged it over.
Yeah, you're like, yeah, and this is very. I wonder. One of my mantras is always threats over answers. But I think that you are a little bit short on answers, and you do want some answers to kill their when your opponent plays turn 3 Rutha, you definitely want to be able to kill that thing, right?
Yeah.
And I think since you have Juke, Umbral Juke, which isn't quite a root out kill them removal spell. And you've got the Baleful Mastery. I think you just want the interaction spell here, right? Like, you've only got 2 other interaction spells, and one of them isn't, like, a pure reach out and kill that thing. If this was a better threat, the Pledge Mage, say this was a Combat Professor, there's definitely an argument for taking that there. But because Pledge Mage is just, like, not that good of a threat, basically, you just want the interaction spell.
So, mistake on that one.
Right? Yeah, I would say that's a mistake. The flip side of that is if you already had a lot of interaction, sure, you just take the creature there. All right, well, we get some nice late pickups here. You take a study break out of this pack, I believe.
I did, and that's why I was asking the Reflective Golem question too. I landed on study break. I haven't had good experience with Zephyr Boots personally.
Yeah, I don't think the card's that great. No.
Okay.
Yeah, so for me, it's between study break and Hunt for Specimens here.
Yep.
I agree taking the study break, especially because we were just saying you are a little bit low on interaction. So, yep, love it. And rounding out the pack here, what do we take here?
Between Beaming Defiance and Divine Gambit, talking about low interaction, I took the Divine Gambit.
Yeah, I like Divine Gambit a lot in this format. This is still an underrated card. Maybe a week ago, I think it was always wheeling. Like, I could always count on that card wheeling. It's got to the point where I think people have picked up that it's a pretty good card. But there's just not a lot of huge things in this format, right? Like, Bookworm is the biggest thing, and that's obviously scary, and you have to be careful about Divine Gambiting a green deck. But a lot of times you can wait to the late game, like the turn 6 or 7, and you might think in an aggressive deck that's not a great deal. You don't want to like have this, oh, this is good in the late game card. But again, these Silver Quill decks don't have to play the super aggro game. They can kind of play more of a, assertive game that goes a little bit long. You're pressuring, but you're not hyper aggro. And Divine Gambit's still good there. And just as a general thing, general statement about the card, there's just not a lot of big permanents to put into play. People have a bunch of instants and sorceries in their deck. The big creatures in this format are fractals, which come off of instants and sorceries, right? So, yeah, I like Divine Gambit a lot, and I definitely agree with you taking it here.
I think the next pick's irrelevant.
Yeah, we got an irrelevant pick here with Infuse. We take another Star Pupil, which is fine.
Irrelevant.
What is it? Make your mark.
Make the mark because I had the Golem.
Yeah, I mean, you're not taking Fracture. Like, that's just not a card.
That's not a good card, right?
Yeah, no. This format has an abnormally low number of artifacts of enchantment, or enchantments even. So, all right, we get to this pack, which is actually pretty interesting. So, thoughts on this pack?
So, I already have the Expanded Anatomy.
Mm-hmm.
I was
doesn't hurt to have two, by the way. I wouldn't feel bad about having two, but
okay.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So I was trying to. So you okay? I had written off like I have it, but yeah, you having two, I didn't even think about that. So I was trying to choose between the Eliminate and the Laureate, and I, like we said, I'm low in interaction, so I landed on the Eliminate.
Yep, agree with this pick. Eliminate's great in this format. It's much better than it was in M21 actually, because this hits the big creatures, like we were just saying, right? The big creatures are fractals. This hits that, and it hits the small ones for 2 mana, which is awesome. You know, it's kind of interesting though. If you had environmental sciences in your pile, I'd actually take the rare here. I take multiple choice. Yeah, because it's just one of the best cards in the format. It's a single pip, and you've got quite a few learn cards already. You know, splashing is just so unintrusive when you have all these learn cards. They just count as your blue source, which is just so great, and you get to play this awesome card. So yeah, I agree with Eliminate 100%, but just speaks to the power of environmental sciences, basically.
So maybe I haven't learned my lesson of environmental sciences yet.
Yeah. I mean, you're coming around to it. You've been taking a lot of lesson cards already.
I first picked an Expanded Anatomy, so I get some credit for that.
Exactly. All right, move on to this next one.
I don't think there's too much in this pack to talk about. I guess the only question I had for you on this one was, I landed on the Strict Proctor, but what's your take on Duress?
It's
versus
okay.
the Owling Shield Mate over there.
Yeah, I think so. So I would take Ellen Shield Mage over Duress if Strict Proctor weren't in this pack. Duress is fine. Like it's hit rate, in a normal format, in a non-instant sorcery based format. You just don't play it because its hit rate is too high. It's just like you just can't afford to miss on this card, right? But I've never missed on this card. Each time when I've cast it, right, it always gets something. Again, like spell counts are super high in this format. You're gonna always hit something. You could even wait for a turn where they've like learned to go get something to guarantee, getting their fractal summoning. People often don't cast fractal summoning in the same turn that they go learn for it. So you can just like snipe that if that's a thing. But I do like taking Strict Proctor here. It's good with your Guiding Voice. It just pressure as well early. 1/3 fire is like fine stat lines, and especially when you don't have you have Dueling Coach in the pile, which is a bit of a non-bow, right? But like, this is a good card to play when you don't have Enter the Battlefield effects, right? If it doesn't affect you and it affects your opponents a percentage of the time, it's going to be a good card. So I agree with that here. Take the 2-drop, especially because Shield Mage has a good chance of wheeling, and especially because you don't have too many Enter the Battlefield effects.
Yeah, and I already have 2 Shield Mages too.
Yeah, I would play a third one though. I really like Shield Mage. All right, moving on to pick 2 here.
So this is a rare I have 0 experience with, and I read it. It didn't look very good, so I just took the black-white land, fix my mana.
Yeah, this is like a fiddly card. It's okay in black-green. You definitely, I wouldn't play this in black-white just for the front side. It's just like kind of dirtily, kind of doesn't do too much. It's a really like, there's grindy cards and then there's the grindy cards, and like Pestling Cauldron is definitely like the super grindy card. It is reasonable if that is your plan, but I don't think it's like an inherently powerful card that you would just throw in any black deck, basically. And I really want to pick up 1 campus if I can. At least, my first one is so important. Almost like environmental sciences, like not as pressing, but having access to that first campus, I don't know if you ever got into the campus scry wars when some of the games go a little bit long, but when your opponent has a campus in play and you don't, oh man, does that feel terrible, right? Yeah. So yeah, locking this first campus, big agree with that. All right, and we move on to this next pack.
I took my second expanded anatomy. I didn't really see any. I haven't had good experience with Spiteful Squad. 4 mana just seems like a lot. I don't know.
Yeah, it's much more annoying than good, basically. It's okay. Like, you can play the card. Same thing with Unwilling Ingredient. You can play the card, but Expanded Anatomy number 2 is great here. I think a lot of people might look at Ingredient here and be like, oh, isn't that what you want in your, like, Silver Quill aggro deck? But I found that it just isn't that important. Like, kind of like I was saying before, my Silver Quill decks want those 2-drops, like those 2-power 2-drops, and then evasive creatures, flyers. You know, this is evasive, but you really want flyers. The low to the ground, all 1-drop, all 2-drop, all 3-drop kind of deck, I don't think is as successful when you're trying to draft Silver Quill. So I don't see this as a good Silver Quill card, basically. So definitely like locking in that second anatomy, because there are games where you just go and get the second one, which is great. You know, when those games come up.
I think this next one's going to be a mistake, but I was really unsure. I was unsure between IOK and Pledge Mage, and I just went with Inquisition. It goes away.
No, yeah, I would say this is a mistake too. Especially, this is actually a good point, a good time to point out how much I like Silver Quill Pledge Mage. I think this card's great, just fantastic. Like, I think it's underrated. I think it wheels too often. It's like my 3-drop of choice in these decks. The fact that it's good on offense, and when you're racing, right? Just like being able to go like flying, lifelink, put my Expanded Anatomy on it, make it a 5-power creature. It's really, really good. So yeah, I really prioritize this card and would definitely take it over Inquisition here.
Okay, I need to bump that up in my pick order, I think, in general.
The times when you even just go like Guiding Voice on it, make it a 4/2 flyer is just, is just pretty nice. All right, wait to this pick.
Doomblade, removal, cheap, easy.
Jam the Doomblade. Yeah, it's kind of funny though. I've had not to say that the card is bad, but I've had a lot of situations where I've been like, all right, well, I'm playing, a red-white deck. This should be able to have targets. And they play, like, Silver Quill Pledge Mage into Silver Quill Pledge Mage. And I'm like, well, this doesn't do anything, And then you have, and then you have, like, the matchups where it's like, oh, they played black-white gold card, and mono-black card, So it's definitely good, but you just have to, like, temper your expectations of it, basically.
So this one, I didn't see a single thing for me. So to just try to build out my gem collection, I took the Infuriate.
Yep, totally reasonable.
We'll make that one irrelevant.
Yeah, sure.
What are your thoughts on Academic Probation? I know it's a lesson, but I wanted to get the removal and interaction, so I took the Lash. But I had somebody use the second mode of Academic Probation against me to win a game.
Yeah, like, it's a fine card. Like, I will always take it if it's free, right? Because there are some times, like you said, you just say, okay, that can't block, basically. Or they go learn for a card. You say, you can't cast that Fractal Summoning next turn, something like that. Because, like, all of the learn cards, it is free in the sense that, like, you never have to actually put the card in your deck. You can only, you only have to get it when you want to get it. But I wouldn't take Academic Probation over a good playable like Lash and Malice, basically. Okay. So, yeah. All right, rounding out this draft here, we pick up
another tough pick for me, honestly. The Stonerise Spirit or the Pledge Mage. I think based on what you said before, I took the Pledge Mage, but you probably should have gone with the Spirit, especially since now that I'm looking at it, I have the Shadewing.
So I would actually just take the Pledge Mage here because I don't actually value Stonerise Spirit that highly in these decks because a lot of your creatures have flying anyways or are very small, so giving it flying doesn't matter that much, right?
Okay. Well, so I just meant for the Shadewing, like if a creature with flying dies, you get a +1/+1.
Oh yeah, I guess that's kind of cute, eh? That's a little bit of synergy.
Is that not a thing in this format? Honestly.
Shadewing is just like, basically with Shadewing, they're going to kill the Shadewing before they kill anything else.
Okay.
Is the idea, right? Like, yes, maybe sometimes they have to like sequence things a bit awkwardly or they don't have 2 removal spells, but it's just much more annoying than good with Shadewing. So
it's basically just, is it a Windrake, a 3-mana 2/2?
Basically, yeah, that's what it comes down to.
I can never remember my Windrakes and Snapping Drakes.
your Windrakes and your Hill Giants and your Snids.
Yeah. I just took the Duress here over the Essence Infusion. I almost took the Essence Infusion because I was like, I might play that, but like you said earlier, Duress has good targets.
Yep.
I think that one's irrelevant.
Well, it's good. I mean, there's no other option in the pack. But
right. Again, I don't get. When I say irrelevant, I don't get credit for an agree.
Sure. Yeah, but that is a fine.
Alex, I'm only worried about my mistake percentage here.
All right, and again, pretty irrelevant. Nothing too interesting. We pick up nothing. Last deck Reflective Golem. We're close to. Yeah. Nice. And we round the back with a Tangle Trap. All right. So,
Well, that was an improvement. My first draft on this I had a 37.8% mistake plus disagree, and now I'm down to 25%.
hey, not bad. Improvement.
Improvement.
We'll take it.
I'll take it.
All right. Let's head on to the build, eh? All right. So here's the build. And it's funny. This is actually a deck that you haven't played yet, so it's great because I can actually, give you some pointers before we actually you actually jump into it. What are your thoughts about the deck here based on our conversation so far?
So I guess I've made a lot of mistakes in this deck building, just based off our conversation. So one of the shield mages is in the board.
Mm-hmm.
We have the 2-star pupils in there, which you said you weren't a big fan of. I don't have the Divine Gambit in, but I felt like I had plenty of interaction otherwise.
Yeah, you're pretty heavy on interactions, so I still might play it over some of these crappier creatures. So basically what I'm seeing here is, it's kind of funny. At the beginning of pack 1, we picked up a lot of good 2s, and it kind of just didn't after that, right? Not that was a huge priority because we had good ones already, but we're like just at the mark of like I'd like to replace this Stonerise Spirit if I could, basically. That's something. My 3s are fine, but not exciting, and I definitely want more evasion up here. So definitely I would get this Shield Mage in. And yeah, I would like it. It's tough because you can't go too low on creatures. There's not too much you can actually bring in here. But I think I would
take the Dueling Mage out?
Yeah, I think you probably keep the Dueling Coach just because like you can't take out too many creatures, like I said. I would probably, because you have 2 anatomies, I think it's actually okay to keep Star Pupils, even though it's not ideal. And I'd probably bring in the Divine Gambit and take out like the Maker Mark, basically.
So in comes Mage and Divine Gambit, and out goes Make Your Mark, and what was the other cut?
And Make Your Mark, and good question, what was it?
I don't know that we identified one.
Yeah, I guess either the Dueling Coach or one of the Star Pupils, which I'd probably take out the Dueling Coach, because Star Pupil can have its moments where like, hey, play it early, get some chip damage, get my anatomy, put it on it, whereas Dueling Coach is like so rarely good, basically.
Got it.
Yeah.
What's your thought on 16? So in Best of 1, I found that 17 lands has been too much for me sometimes. What are your thoughts?
So if I have an expanded anatomy, so not an expanded, environmental sciences, that pushes me towards 16 just a little bit, not a ton. I generally like playing 17 lands more than 16 just because you have Lesson Learn, which uses a lot of your mana, right? Like you have a lot of stuff to do in the late game. I think you can probably go 16 in this deck because you're really low to the ground and you don't have like many 4s and 5s. So I think it's okay to go 16 here, especially with Silverquill Campus, meaning that you are not going to be hurting for sources.
Would you go 8 and 8 on this with the double white for Pledge Mage, or would you go like 9-7?
I think you can make concessions to the double white. Yeah, so make a little bit, one more planes in there if you were to play 17.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Alex, the last most important question is, should I have to run the deck like this for the league for integrity purposes?
No. I think outside assistance is okay.
Okay.
It's not a high level tournament.
Any interest in bringing in that Weatherbloom Pledge Mage?
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah. We should probably do that. Yeah. I completely glossed over that. Let's bring in the Pledge Mage over one of the Star Pupils then. How about that?
So Mark out, Dueling Coach out, Pupil out, Pledge Mage in, Shield Mage in, and Divine Gambit in.
Yeah, I think so. And you know what? At that point, with 2 5-drops, I'd actually just cut the other Star Pupil, play 17th land.
Got it.
Yeah.
So that's four misses on the build here.
Yeah, so I think because this is like, just to mark this a little bit, I think your curve it's kind of funny. It's low, but I kind of want a few more expensive things here, which is odd. You don't usually hear that coming from me, right? So I think the curve is good, but I'd give it like an 8 to ding you for. I would have liked to pick up a few more flyers up here if we could have. We had 1 or 2 opportunities too. As far as synergy goes, yeah, you're like, okay, you've got, Learn Lesson is a huge part of what synergy is in this format, and you've got a pretty good Learn Lesson board. I would like your, again, a few more flyers, which I think ties into the synergy a little bit there. So again, I'll give you like a 7 there, because I think you are missing maybe a few good 2s and a few flyers up there. And as far as mana base goes, yeah, like you're off a little bit, but you know it's fine. This is not a very tricky mana base to build, so yeah, I'll give you an 8 on that too. All right, so here we are in our gameplay, and just to be clear, this is not the same deck we just drafted because Nathan hasn't played this one. This is just a situation where Nathan said, "Hey, I am curious what to do in this situation. You know, what would you do?" And like you said, you labeled this as I'm unsure how to sequence my learn lesson stuff.
Yep. And I mean, here you can see Strict Proctor, which it's a very similar deck because it's black-white, aggro. This is where I learned that Spiteful Squad, or one of these decks, that Spiteful Squad's not great. So one of the questions I have, Alex, is this a keep? I have environmental sciences in the board.
Right. Yeah. So because you have, and this just speaks to the power of environmental sciences, I would be, I'd probably still keep this hand if you didn't, especially on the draw here. But it makes me so comfortable to just say, yeah, I can keep this because I have Guiding Voice going to get my environmental sciences on turn 3, right? It just makes so many more hands keepable. And this is, a good example of why environmental sciences isn't just important to decks you're splashing in. It's important to all of the decks, right? All of the decks with magic cards in it that are colored, So, yeah. All right, so we keep this hand. We'll just speed through some of the plays here. They play a colony. You play the Proctor. Yep. They attack, and you say no blocks. Thoughts on that?
I felt like I needed a target for my Guiding Voice to make sure that I could get my lesson. And, I felt that 2 damage wasn't going to be that big a deal at the beginning of the game. What do you...
100%. All of those things. I just wanted to get a little bit of a vibe check
there,
I
didn't know if I messed up something.
Yeah. No. This wasn't Nathan. You actually should have... No. Especially when you have Swords to Plowshares in your hand. You shouldn't, you don't want to make a block that they, if they're representing a combat trick, well, if you have an interaction spell in your hand, that can certainly blow them out in a later turn. So, yeah, definitely no block there. They play a Quandrix Pledge Mage, which is a bit threatening. And then we go through this turn here, and we go up, Guiding Voice, just like we said, go get our sciences, beautiful, great. And we attack. You're not blocking because they're representing that combat trick potentially, so yeah, you just make that attack. You sciences for a swamp, and they say, yep. Sure.
So I think the next learn lesson is when I really was unsure what to do.
All right, so let's think about this turn, because this turn's actually really interesting. So this game was actually from a week or 2 ago, you were saying, so, I can't ask you what you were thinking in this situation, but what is today Nathan thinking in this situation, maybe?
Well, I was really constrained on the black mana. So if I do Spiteful Squad, Lash, Hunt for Specimens, or Umbral Juke, that's all I can do. I can add in the swords if I need to. I've had the Pledge Mages get out of hand. I've had the Quandrix Apprentice get out of hand. I think that's just too much value. So if I had to do it now, I would probably Lash the Apprentice. Mm-hmm. I don't remember what I did. What would current day Alex do?
I would do that as well because both these things are cascading threats and you need to deal with them. When you have 6 cards in hand, they have 3. You just want to not die, basically. Even though you're an aggressive deck that wants to play its creatures and then cast its removal spells, they're in a position where they're actually just racing you and they're on board before you are, right? So it's not like you're the pure aggressive deck versus a pure control deck. This is very much a mid-range deck versus a mid-range deck, at least in this situation. So you just want to play to what exactly is this situation, what's happening here, rather than what is my deck trying to do. And I think sometimes those get confused or conflated where it's well, I'm an aggressive deck, I really want to pressure. I mean, sure, that is true in the abstract, but in this situation, you got to deal with these threats. Even the Scurried Colony is kind of a big deal, because eventually it's going to be able to block all your small flyers. So what did 2 weeks ago Nathan do? Well, let's see. Played the Spiteful Squad. So
I think I went for the most mana efficient play.
Right, and that is another heuristic that is good to consider when to break it. And I would break it here because you have a really nice turn where you just go Lash and Malice, Swords to Plowshares, get rid of these 2 threats, and you can start unloading after. Right, you even got the Biblioplexus system to buy back the swords, which is really nice, right? And yeah, these 2 cards just start to spiral out of control if you don't deal with them. So yeah, I would definitely deal with those now. Now, if you had more of an onboard presence already, you could say, okay, I can start pressuring a little bit here, right? But you don't have the tools currently on board or even in hand to really get them dead before they can take over with these cards. So you definitely just deal with their early threats.
Makes sense.
All right, so they cast an Opt. Yeah, I mean, they're already getting it. Look, this 1 mana drew them 2 cards and put a counter on their Pledge Mage, right? Pretty brutal. They attack. Yeah, you go for the block. You just have to. And what do? They expel.
Expelled.
Wow. Yeah. Brutal. So. All right. Yep. You swords that now. You lash that. Yeah, I think that's reasonable. You play Campus Guide. You go get a land. You could consider not getting a land there, honestly, because like it allows you to double spell next turn with, with these two. But I don't know exactly how important that is. Like that's a kind of a situation where I might just say, I will take a land, but I won't top a land.
Sure.
I think you're right to actually do it, but it's worth considering. Like I would think about that for a second and be like, do I actually need this land? Is it that important to double spell here? I think you're right to do so, though. I definitely agree, if I think about it for a little while. All right, move on. Okay, they play a 3/3 Serpentine Curve and a 1/1 Death Toucher. Now we get to some, the lesson learned decision points, basically.
Yep. So in my lesson board, I have Expanded Anatomy, 2 Inkling Summonings, and Introduction to Prophecy, and then Reduced to Memory.
Right.
Because we've already used the Environmental Sciences. I wasn't sure what to do, to be honest. The Inkling Summoning or Introduction to Prophecy, I'd love to know what your thoughts were, or just make the Campus Guide bigger, a 4/3.
Yeah, so this comes down to what's my plan? What do I think I should be doing in this part of the game? We've kind of dealt with their threats. We're pretty much a parody. I mean, like, these are cards, like, they're ahead on board a little bit, but these aren't cards we can't deal with. So I would say we're probably at the part of the game where we want to pressure as much as possible because their blue-green-white deck is probably going to have better late games than our deck. Not to say our deck can't grind a little bit, but I would like to close out the game here, basically. And what that means is I'm probably just going to get, the Inkling Summoning like you did. Okay. I think in some spots where the Inkling Summoning won't get the job done, where you're like, well, yeah, they have a 3/3 flyer or something. You just get the Prophecy, right? To just be like, okay, let me dig for more removal. Let me dig for bigger threats, my own Owlin Shield Mage or whatever. But in this spot, especially because you have the Biblioplex Assistant to buy back a removal spell to get this flyer out of the way eventually. You just want to get the flyer so you can start pressuring with that. So agree with that, totally.
And just to give everybody a little more context, Alex, I mean, taking what we just saw in the draft, I really don't have a lot of 5-drops in this deck. We can show a picture of it later, but I had, 4 was the top of my curve, and then I had 2 closing statements at the top.
Yeah. Which is kind of, really highlights the decision I was thinking about before, where it's like, do I really want to top a land? Right? Because that's like one more with the Campus Guide, because that's one more spell I don't have in my really low to the ground deck, right? It's like, there's a time sensitive aspect where I would like to double spell early with my 2 black cards, but that 5th land has such little value to you in general, right? You know what I mean? So again, I think you're right to do it there, but it's definitely worth considering not putting a land on top.
Should I have attacked with or I don't know if we've gotten there yet, but should I attack with my Inkling Summoning?
No, I don't think so, because I think my plan from here on out would be to Biblioplex Assistant, get back removal spell, kill this. You don't want to be trading, basically. The advantage of trading is so that your 2/1, this 2/1 could get in, but I'd much rather go Biblioplex Assistant, have a bunch of 2/1s, kill your Drake, start clocking you for 6 in the air, right? You generally just don't want to trade your threats that you're playing to win the game with. All right, so they Mage Duel, a little bit unfortunate. Yep, get some beats in. Draw land, and this is where it's like, oof, another land.
Yeah, I only had 15 lands in this deck.
All right, we Biblioplex Assistant, and we get back Sword Sploshare. And we have a decent plan. Obviously, they're clocking us here, so we definitely have to do something. And you choose, you gotta get in there. You gotta make that double block. This is tough because you might want to just wait a turn, right? Because if they have anything, it basically means the game is over for you, because you just can't come back from this position because they have a 4/4 and a board. I think it's worth just taking another 4 damage, making that block next turn when you have the Insurance and Sword Plowshare in hand.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. I just got lucky there then.
Yeah. All right, so you go on. We draw the juke, and it's the awkward part of the game where there are 20. Here I wouldn't trade, because this is like your route to victory, this 2/1. I think your plan is basically from this point, how my plan would be, get their attacker out of the way. Or so their blocker, their O&M blocker. Or just take this damage, because they're clearly planning to play something else here and see what they do. And then start clocking with the 2-1. Obviously, it's not going to get there by itself, but it in tandem with, another flyer you could draw, or another big threat, which you don't have a ton of, but I think, like, trading in this situation isn't very good for you, right? Because they have 3 cards in hand. And now you're not going to win a lot of these games anyways, but I think the path to victory in this game doesn't involve trading off one of your threats, basically.
Sure. A lot of strategic errors in this. This is why I love watching these gameplay things with you.
Yeah, these are great. All right, they play Witherwind Pledge Mage. That probably has to get swords. Yeah. Snap it off. Okay,
25 to 8. It's close.
Ooh, we drew a Glyph Weaver. So this is interesting strategically. Or I guess this is
I'm not
more of a
close
tactic.
to that, am I? I'm like 2 lands away.
2 lands, and one of them has to be a swamp.
Yeah, and I only have 15 in the deck.
Right, so I think there's some temptation to waiting and being like, okay, maybe I can wait 2 extra turns, and maybe I'll draw the lands I need and wrath them. But if they draw any other creature, I think you're just dead here. So you chose to play the 2/3 here, and I think that's right, because there's just no time to get value, basically. And actually,
I think that's what I did. Let's see if that's actually what I did.
Specifically with Deadly Vanity, the funny thing is about the backside of this card, let's just rewind here. The backside of this card actually says, the wording gets you, because it says, choose a creature or planeswalker, then destroy all creatures or planeswalker. You actually can't choose to not choose a creature. Yeah. So if you don't have a creature, you got to choose one of theirs. So definitely just play this 2/3, yeah. And hope maybe, again, you can draw into some more threats. They cast a 7/7. Probably not going to get the job done at this point.
I think I just cycled a Defiant Strike.
Yeah, and then it's pretty much game over for you at this point.
Yeah, I think I was just really struggling at the beginning of which lesson learned to get and the sequencing there.
Yeah. So and that was tricky. So just to rewind a little bit here. Generally, my especially when you have other lesson learned cards in your hand, right, or in your deck, I generally just go and get Environmental Sciences. Like in this situation, you obviously get it because you're missing a color. But if you're even a little bit short on lands, it's better to just go get the Sciences so you can cast your other learn cards, and those other learn cards can go get your creatures or your expanded anatomy or whatever it is, right? So Environmental Sciences is just the card I get the most often early in the game. And then, when you get to this other point with the hunt for specimens where it's kind of interesting, you have to ask yourself, what am I looking for? What am I trying to do with my lesson, right? Am I trying to close out the game? Well, I probably want a creature if that's the case, right? And past that, you say, well, will this creature close out the game? And it has the potential to with these 2 other flyers. If this creature, say you didn't have these 2 other flyers, and they're still at 20, I don't think it's actually reasonable to get Inkling Summoning here, and I would just go get Introduction to Prophecy to go get more answers to their creatures or to go find a big threat or something. But Inkling Summoning in tandem with these other flyers can definitely get the job done.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting that I boiled this down to, like, I struggled with which lesson to learn to get, but I do think that your line earlier in the game to Lash and Swords versus playing the Spiteful Squad, I would have been left with probably a better board later on. So I think maybe that's also where I made a mistake.
Right, in part, I've been saying this entire episode that the Silver Quill decks don't need to get out the gate super quickly to actually win. They can win with their flyers later, right? A lot of my Silver Quill games just come down to, like, kill your early threats, and then I'll win my flyers. I think that's the approach I would take this game.
Good to know.
All right, so let's wrap it up from there. Any big picture takeaways from today's episode?
I think I still don't have lesson learned down pat, clearly with the Environmental Sciences pick. This has kind of been like the Silver Quill episode because that's the lane I've been in a lot. And it seems like I've been trying to build Silver Quill, like you just said, a little too low to the ground.
Right.
And so I think, this more recent build that we just tweaked, it'll have a few more 5-drops. I think that looks stronger versus this one, which had more removal, but it was... I struggled in the late game. I think, just for context for everybody, I had one Silver Quill that went 7-1, I think, and this one went 1-3, and I struggled later in the games with this one for sure. So takeaways, I think I've been doing Silver Quill wrong.
Right.
So I'll try to do it better moving forward. I liked your feedback at the beginning about, with only 5 guilds, kind of try to stay where you are for as long as possible until you're getting like the obvious signs to shift.
Yeah, and just to shift back to that quickly, you can get mega rewarded if you do find that that super open guild that nobody else is in. College. I belabored the point before, and I made the blunder myself.
I think I just said it too.
Yeah. So. You can get really paid off if you're the only one in Lorehold, for example, right? But at the same time, I think sometimes you do train wreck yourself trying to find that most open guild, because it's super appealing. You hear it in podcasts, in videos, in content streams so often. Find that open lane, find that open college. But if you are towing that line for too long and you're like, let me find it, not only do you give up your early picks, but you just get really wishy-washy, right? So yeah, my big to reiterate, my big picture advice is just stay in your lane until you can't, and if you can't, that probably means that the college that's coming to you is very open, right? If everything else is cut. So yeah.
Do you think the draft we looked at earlier, we shifted at the right time?
Yeah, for sure. I think so, for sure. Like, one of the things that's nice about Silverquill is it's pretty deep. And you weren't really getting good green cards, right? Where you picked that normal professor, it's not like you really saw other good green cards. So yeah, I think that was a great point to pivot.
Okay. Sure. Real quick before we go, I know in the previous season we were able to do the GoFundMe for the charity.
Right, yeah.
So we could see donations and tracking. I'm working with the Colorado State University to get that up and running for now, but I don't know that that's feasible. So I think you posted a link in the previous video, and some people are donating, but we don't have the visibility into that. So for the contest for season 2, for your coaching sessions, I think if you could just DM us a link or email me a link. I'm Nathan at Leveling Up Lives or Leveling Up Lives on Twitter. Where do we find you, Alex?
Yeah, you can find me at cordocoach@gmail.com if you want to email about the coaching. If you've contributed to the charity of our choice this month, just to go over if maybe you've watched the first season, the 2 top donors, the top contributors to our charity each season, they get an hour of coaching from me, either for themselves or donated. So email us, either one of us, the proof, basically the receipt of of you donating, and we'll track that.
Yep, perfect. Yeah, and just I guess I kind of glossed over that myself. This season we're working trying to get with Colorado State University. Out here in Colorado last year we had a lot of forest fires. I know California was on the news, but we had 3 or 2 of the biggest forest fires we've had in a long time. And so Colorado State University looks to reforest, and they're trying to plant a bunch of trees and get everything recovering from that. So I really, as a big outdoors person, I do a lot of hiking and skiing here in Colorado. I'd like to try to bring some of that back.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's a good cause. Check it out. Check out their website too. Like Nathan said, that's going to be in the description. All right, Nathan, I think that does it for us. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, thank you.